Hi, I'm Kesenya and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. I'm your Astro Weather Girl, here with this week's Astro Weather Report. I'm going to show you how the stars are going to affect your life this week. Welcome everybody. I want to empower you through the tool of astrology this week, and this week we are looking at Mars retrograde, and it's going to be retrograding from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. Happy Halloween, everybody. As you can tell, I'm in my Halloween costume. I love this time of year. I love fancy dress. And this year, I dress up most years for Halloween on my Halloween video. This year, I am dressed as Hypatia, a very famous philosopher, astronomer, astrologer who was murdered by Christians at the burning of the Library of Alexandria. This was a long, long time ago, back in 415 AD. Anyone who knows anything about Hypatia knows that she was quite an incredible woman. She was a philosopher and teacher, which was very rare for a woman to actually have that status in ancient culture in Alexandria in Egypt. So I just adore her. I think that she was a forerunner ahead of her time and one of the smartest women in history. So that's why I'm dressed as Hypatia. And of course, it's quite tragic what happened to her, hence murder victim. So that's my Halloween tie-in right there. So in other years and in other videos, I've talked about the special and significant time that Halloween is in the annual cycle of things and why we choose to celebrate it, why it's actually important, because it is actually tied into some quite interesting astrology. That's why we choose to celebrate Day of the Dead, Samhain. I know I always say that wrong. I'm sorry for those who are perfectionists out there. Halloween. We celebrate all these Day of the Dead kind of themes and sort of spooky, if you want to call them that, themes at this time of year because there's an astrological tie-in. But this year I'm not going to talk about that. It would take up too much of this video, and this video is going to be large enough as it is because we are talking about a very rare event, Mars retrograde, and that's the main focus for this video. So if you want to know about Halloween and the tie-in, I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff online by people, but you could also go back to one of my previous Halloween videos and see what I had to say there. Nonetheless, happy celebrating, everybody. May this magical and mystical holiday be much loved in your world. Now, just as an aside, if you enjoy what I teach you and share about here in my astrology videos each week, you're going to love being part of the Guiding Star Patreon family, because that's where you will receive amazing astrology videos that are over and above what I give here on YouTube each month. That's 3 extra videos and forecasts for your sign coming your way every month if you join at the bronze star level for the Guiding Star Patreon family. The link's in the description below. And in special other news, I will be offering my Introduction to Astrology course that's at the Royal Stars Academy at heavily reduced rates for 2023. Now, that I haven't put them up on sale yet, but if you go over to the Royal Stars Academy at Thinkific, the link is in the description below, and you register your interest in being a part of the Royal Stars Academy, you will be first to be notified when places open for next year in 2023. You won't want to miss this. When I say heavily discounted, I mean heavily discounted prices. So jump on in, sign up so you don't miss out on learning some amazing astrology with me. And even if you want to take it the whole way and do the 4-year course and become certified as a Guiding Star Royal Stars Academy practitioner, then you can do that too. But if you're just interested in studying for your own edification and knowledge about astrology, you can by all means do that as well. It's open for everybody. So head on over to the Royal Stars Academy and sign up in waiting. So This week's energy focus is Mars retrograde, and we are midway between eclipses, which is very significant as well, that this should be happening with Mars going backwards in the sky, halfway between the eclipses. Mars is also out of bounds for the duration of eclipse season. I am feeling erratic. My emotions have been all over the shop like a freaking roller coaster. And I'm sure that there are many other people who can relate to that as well. Thank you, Mars out of bounds and eclipse energy. So we are really going to be feeling this Mars influence for the next couple of weeks. But there is a purpose. There's always a purpose astrologically, and especially at eclipse season, it's designed to take us into our destiny, our purpose, our mission for actually being here on the planet. Let's talk about Mars, and let's talk about Mars retrograde. Well, Mars is going to be retrograding. It's over here in Gemini from 25 degrees of Gemini back to 8 degrees of Gemini. So that's the space that we're looking at. I'll write that on the board just in case you need a reference. 25 and 8 are the degree markers. Okay, that's going to come into play as we go through this conversation. So what's Mars retrograde all about? We'll start with that. Let's consider this the Superman in the phone booth period of our lives. It's the moment of getting ready to go and fight the bad guys, getting rid of our cumbersome journalist attire and putting on our gorgeous Y fronts on the outside of our superhero costume. That's what this period of Mars retrograde symbolizes. Mars retrograde happens every 2 years, and it's always a time of preparation and strategizing for our future. It's actually not a good time to start a fight or a conflict, or even to take significant action or instigate new things. Now, by all means, we can instigate and take action on something we've already been working on prior to the retrograde period of Mars, prior to the 31st of October when Mars goes retrograde. Keep going. Keep working on those projects. Keep exploring those, avenues of action that you want to take in your life. But if you decide during Mars retrograde, I'm going to start doing this, then you could be met with some really not serious difficulties, but it's just going to take longer to achieve, be more frustrating, and you'll end up tearing your hair out a lot of the time. Just be aware of that. It's not the time to start a fight. You'll end up losing. It's not the time to take some course of brand new action. Now, Mars when he is retrograding, is actually in his full moon cycle, if you like. He's opposite the sun. So the sun's here in Scorpio. It's going to swing around through Sagittarius and into Capricorn by the time the retrograde has finished. And of course, Mars will be opposite all these 3 signs here when that is occurring. That's how Mars retrograde works. And if you notice when I was talking about Mercury retrograde recently, and my Mercury retrograde video is available on where I go into great detail about explaining how it works on my Patreon video list, which you will have access to if you join Patreon. But Mercury retrograde works very, very differently. There's always a conjunction with the sun in a Mercury retrograde. No, not so for Mars, and there are reasons why. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Mars is opposite the sun every time when he goes retrograde. And of course, when he's opposite at the sun, he's actually brightest when he's opposite the sun. He's highly illuminated. He's very red and fiery in the sky when he is in his retrograde motion. In Vedic astrology, this means he's powerful and kick-ass now because he's closest to the earth and he's at his strongest energy. But he is still the Superman running to the phone booth, not rocketing through the air. We're transitioning from our human self into our superhero state at this point. That's the energy of Mars when he's retrograde. So this period can be a little bit hard to bear. We're longing to get out there. We're longing to get up and away. But the universe asks us instead to prepare, to get ready. And it might do this to us by creating blockages or giving us the go slows. And we frequently get the feeling of running on the spot. Like I said, we're frustrated. We've started some action during Mars retrograde. We're not getting anywhere. And we're like, spinning our wheels like a hamster on the treadmill. That's what it can feel like during Mars retrograde. What can we do during Mars retrograde? How can we work with this energy to our best advantage? Well, we can listen to our instincts. And we can find out by looking within what really drives us. For example, what makes you so desirous of something that you will do anything to get it? That's your beacon light. That's your driving force. That's your lowest lane. Now, once Mars retrograde is over, then you've got to be prepared to take the slow, methodical steps to win lowest lane, to get what you want, to find your and claim your beacon light. But this is the preparation phase. It's about knowing what it is you want in your life and strategizing towards getting it now. Lex Luthor isn't going anywhere. You'll catch him in the end. So do the preparation work now while Mars goes retrograde. But you've got to understand what it is you want. What do you want your life to look like? Who do you want to be? What's your ultimate desire for a happy life for yourself? And then do the strategizing during Mars retrograding, and then prepare to take action once he comes out of retrograde on the 12th of January. Okay, so let's learn about Mars and why this time is going to be intense. We'll start with a bit of astronomy all about Mars. Mars is a small and rocky planet. He's one of the terrestrial planets, and he's the final terrestrial planet before we get to the gas giants. And he is the planet that sits between the Earth and Jupiter. There is an asteroid belt in there as well, but Mars is also one of those planets between Earth and Jupiter, the only planet between Earth and Jupiter. It makes Mars the fourth planet from the Sun. Sometimes Mars is known as the red planet, and this is because at this stage he's very, very bright and red in the sky, but he's bright and red because he's covered in iron oxide, which gives Mars its very red look. Even when we're looking at Mars without a telescope, he still looks red to us in the sky. In fact, he has an association in ancient culture with Antares, who is a very bright red star, and sometimes they have been, at times in history, mistaken for one another because they can both be very bright and red. Now, the days and the seasons on Mars are actually quite similar to the days and the seasons here on Earth, because both planets have a similar tilt and rotate in the same way. Very interesting, isn't it? Mars also has this rocky nature, and that's something that makes it quite unique in the solar system as well. It has the biggest known volcano, and which is also the highest mountain in the whole solar system. And this is Mount Olympus Mons. It's 21 kilometers high, and you could fit 3 Mount Everests sitting on top of each other to create Mount Olympus Mons. That's how tall it is. And I can't help but wonder, there's lots of theories out there about ancient cultures and where the gods came from and so on. Is it possible that Mount Olympus, referred to in Greek mythology, may have been Mount Olympus Mons? I don't know, but it's something that churns around in my head just the same. Can we prove it? Probably not, but it's something worth pondering, is it not? Now, the old Hermetic principle, as above, so below, really applies to this idea of Mars with the biggest volcano in the solar system. It represents what do volcanoes represent? They represent passion, they represent rage, and that's Mars' nature as well. So it stands to reason, and it's very fitting that Mars should have the largest volcano in the solar system as a part of its structure. Now, it hasn't exploded for eons, but it's still an ancient volcano. Mars also has the deepest canyon in the solar system as well. It's a whopping 4 kilometers deep. That's 3 times as deep as the Grand Canyon in America. Once again, the as above, so below principle applies, because when we get enraged or passionate, which are qualities of Mars in astrology, what are we drawing on? A depth of emotion, a depth of feeling, very deep, very intense. And here is Mars with the deepest canyon in the solar system present. Quite interesting, isn't it? Mars also has ice water covering its 2 polar caps. So one polar cap at the top and one polar cap at the bottom, just like the Earth does. But because the pressure of the atmosphere is so low, water cannot exist on Mars in its liquid state. It can only be there in its frozen state. So that's why it's got 2 frozen ice caps. It may have had water previously. There are certainly sort of canals and channels on Mars that indicate it probably had water at some point in its history. But with the atmospheric pressure so disintegrated and so low, now it's only got the ice caps that remain. And again, as above, so below. Have you ever been so enraged that you are frozen with fury? You can't speak for the white hot rage that is within you? That's Mars. That is Mars energy. So here we are again with some symbolism here. Mars also has two little moons that orbit it. They're not spherical moons like we have. They're more asteroidal, if that's even a word. And they were discovered in 1877 and named after the mythological twins Phobos and Deimos. Now, Phobos means panic and fear, and Deimos means terror and dread. Nice. Okay, so these two are tied into the energy of Mars because they are orbiting Mars. So we've got this angry, passionate, rageful planet, which can be used for good. We'll talk about that very soon, actually. And it's got these sort of very difficult twins from Greek mythology orbiting it as well. So a fascinating planet is Mars and all its systems, including Phobos and Deimos. Now, in mythology, let's go into the mythology of Mars. The planet Mars was named after the ancient Roman god of war. And in importance, Mars was second only to the king of the gods, Jupiter. Mars was the son of Jupiter, actually. So Mars was actually revered in Roman mythology. And the god Mars ruled military power, and he was a representation in Roman mythology of power and force as a mechanism to secure peace. So Mars, in the Roman sense, was not necessarily associated with pointless violence and aggression for the sake of being a pain in the ass. It was much more, like I said, power and force as a way to secure peace. So really, really interesting that was his connection. And we're going to sort of spell out the differences between the Greek and the Roman god of war in just a minute. And you'll be I'm quite fascinated to know about this. But Mars in mythology, he fell in love with Venus, the goddess of beauty and love. And so that's why we see in relational astrology, we look at our Venus, which is the goddess of beauty and love, and Mars, the god of passion and desire, and the coming together and how they interact in a person's chart can tell us a lot about the way they'll behave in relationships and what kind of relationships they will tend to attract. But that's relational astrology. We'll put that aside for the time being. So the god Mars also ruled young men, agriculture, aggression and war, like I said, that delivers peace to the people, the defender god, the protector, warrior, the superhero archetype, in other words. Now, in ancient Babylonian mythology, the god Nergal was aligned to Mars, was the equivalent of Mars, and he was also a war god as well. He was a bit more scary than Mars, the Roman god. In time, he also developed into the god of the underworld after his parents, who were the gods Enlil, who I don't have a lot of time for, and Ninlil gave him the rulership of the underworld. And this was why he had ancient rulership over Scorpio, before Pluto came along and, took over the rulership of Scorpio and as the god of the underworld. In ancient Babylonian times, Mars was the god of the underworld. Now, in the Greek version of the god Mars, we find Aries, although Aries was very different to Mars. In Roman mythology, Mars was this protector, superhero, warrior god and defender god, military power for the sake of defense. Aries was considered to be needlessly destructive and violent, and, whereas Mars was practicing power for the purposes of peace. So, there's a great deal of difference. Often in Greek mythology, Aries would suffer humiliation and defeat. He was considered by the Greeks as a dangerous force, a bit of an embarrassing force, actually, that was overwhelming and insatiable in battle and destructive and manslaughtering, but not revered by the people. He was an embarrassment. So there's a difference between the Greek god and the Roman god. And something, Mars, as the god of war, kind of carries both of those energies. Now, I know we have Aries, where are we? The sign Aries here. But there are kind of these two sides to Mars as the god of war, the planet. And so we've got this Roman god that is powerful and purposeful and defensive and all those things that can, for the purposes of peace, I'll just keep repeating that phrase. And yet the shadow side of Mars can be this Greek Aries, which is this dangerous force, insatiable for battle and fights and very destructive. And, you know, this to me is so interesting. Mars, the superhero archetype, Aries, the warmongerer. And so we really, when we're looking at Mars in our astrology chart, we have to consider, okay, in what ways am I demonstrating the higher vibration of Mars, being a superhero, being the protector warrior? And in what ways am I letting the Mars shadow energy of the warmonger, the fighter, the person just poking the bear all the time and causing conflict and trouble, in what ways am I letting the shadow side of Mars come out? Now, as we talk about Mars in Gemini, and we'll get to that in just a second, keep in mind Mars in Gemini is not very comfortable. It's debilitated. So we may be more likely, while Mars is in Gemini, to see more of that Aries side of provocateur and agitator and warmongerer coming out in our personal lives and maybe in the collective as well. So keep that in mind, that the condition of Mars in your chart, you know, whether it's well dignified or has good aspects or not, will usually indicate which element, which side, which archetype of Mars has a more of a proliferation and a more of a demonstration in your life. Let's talk about the astrology of Mars. In astrology, Mars tells us about our courage and our energy. And where Mars sits in our astrology chart, which is the map of the sky at the moment we were born, it can tell us so much about how we can get ourselves out of a rut when life is feeling stuck. Mars is the energizer bunny of the horoscope, okay? He will put light a fire under you and get you jumping. So look at where Mars sits in your chart. For example, my Mars is in my 6th house, and nothing motivates me more than the need to work. I actually am a bit of a workaholic. Mars in the 6th house can do that. Where is your Mars? What gets you going? What gets you motivated? What gets you up and at them up and at them every day? So there are so many ways we can express our energy and enthusiasm for life, and Mars shows us how we can best do that. It can tell us about what will stir us into action and fire us up, as I've said. So we might be passionate about work, like in my case, or in the 6th house it could also be fixing problems, you know, being a good problem solver could be Mars in the 6th house. How do we find solutions? What do we do to turn this situation around? Mars can be that in the 6th house as well. In the 11th house, you might be passionate about fixing problems for the good of humanity. In the 5th house, you might be passionate about taking care of children, or in the 10th house, creating a career for yourself. Depending on where Mars is in the astrology chart will be what can fire you into action. Now, this is why Mars in our chart is often connected to what will motivate us in life and how we can express our passions, including when we feel angry or when we fall in love with someone. Mars is connected to all of those things. Mars is the planet that is in charge of the 2 signs. In ancient astrology, he was in charge of Scorpio. These days, we attribute Pluto the rulership of Scorpio, but I tend to use ancient rulerships, especially when I'm talking about what's happening in the 3rd dimensional reality. Then I would still use Mars as the ruler of Scorpio. And you'll hear me doing that in my astro weather reports from time to time. But also Mars has the rulership of the sign of Aries as well. So both of these star signs are a little bit like Mars, obviously enough. Aries is the youthful, independent, fast and competitive energy of Mars, while Scorpio is the passionate, strong, controlling and strategic side of Mars. So they are both like Mars in many ways. As we know, Mars is the warrior or superhero. If you are a woman and you've got Mars, we all do have Mars somewhere in our chart, then you might like to think of Mars as your Wonder Woman energy, your Amazonian princess kind of energy. Wherever Mars sits in your chart can also refer to your hero's journey and what you've got to be the Superman or the Wonder Woman about in your life. My Mars is in a sextile with the moon. And for my life, I've had to be the warrior, the Wonder Woman in my role as a single mother. Moon conjunct Uranus had that outcome for me. And with Mars, I had to be heroic about that. I had to, rise up like Wonder Woman and take care of my children for many, many years now. So what is your hero's journey with Mars? What is it aspecting in your chart? Where is it sitting? What house is it sitting in? And what is that telling you about the hero's journey that you are on? And what does it tell you about what you can get fired up about and passionate about? Where you can shake yourself out of a rut by putting your energy into something. Certainly having to take care of my children has kept, for a number of years, a lot of the, poor me, I'm a victim, it's not fair, at bay, because I just had to get on with the job, So needing to provide for a family has been my hero's journey, and has certainly got me out of a funk on many, many occasions. If you have a weak Mars in your chart, if it's debilitated and has difficult aspects to it, you might need to strengthen it as Mars goes into his retrograde period. And you want to do that by learning to value your inner hero and honor your hero's journey, whatever that looks like for you. And I'm going to give some remedies shortly for how we can amp up our Mars energy and make it stronger, and hopefully get it into that healthy Mars expression, had to think of the word there, as opposed to sort of being in the lackluster sort of shadow side that we don't want to have. Now, if you have a strong Mars, a healthy Mars in your chart, it will show where you are being your very own superhero, in what ways you're being courageous. And I've also got some methods for toning down Mars if he's too overactive. So stick with me, I'm going to talk about those in just a second. But Mars, let's put him in a nutshell here. He asks us, as an everyday superhero in your ordinary life, what would you be known for? Not being invisible, not flying off around the earth, not having X-ray vision. I'm talking about everyday superhero. I am a superhero in the way I'm taking care of my family as best I can on my own. I am a superhero in showing up for work every day, even though I'm battling high-level depression. What is it? High-functioning depression. And I keep showing up and I keep doing my work. There's a couple of examples. I'm showing up every day to sort of stay with a wife who's got mental illness and is severely troubled, and I'm just keeping on showing up and being there as a superhero in that area of my life. What is it in your life that you keep showing up for and being a superhero regarding? That's your Mars energy. So Mars is the bridge planet between the personal self and the interpersonal planets in astrology, because it sits between Venus and Mercury, which sort of always hover around the sun here, and then we've got Earth, which isn't usually represented in an astrological chart, and then we have Mars, and then there's Jupiter. So Mars is sitting between the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and then we have Mars, and then we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Okay, so it's this bridging planet between the personal planets and the interpersonal planets. Now, because of this, it represents the point between our personality and identity, the personal planets, and the social order of things, Jupiter, Saturn, and onwards. So Mars represents where we take things beyond our personal self or outside of ourselves in order to make something happen. For example, Venus energy in the astrological chart represents where we want love and how we want to be loved and how we will give our love. It's who we are when it comes to love. Mars is the action we take outside of the way we feel, action we take to get that love or to demonstrate that love. It is the action that we personally give out to the world or go looking for in the world. That's Mars energy. Do you see the difference? The personal is who we are and Mars is what we do. Personal planets are who we are and Mars is what we do. Mars is to put our personal wants into action for ourselves, while Jupiter and Saturn represent the actions that affect our society and how we function in society, the interpersonal planets. Mars asks us, who am I individually and in what way do I interact with society? Now, Mars and Pluto have similar rulership natures, like they both rule over Scorpio. But Mars is the representation in the chart of personal assertion and personal power, while Pluto represents collective group assertion and collective group power. And we're seeing that very much so with Pluto in the latter degrees of Capricorn. We have seen the collective hierarchy trying to assert their power and their assertion upon everybody else over the last couple of years. I can't wait, and I think there's a lot of people hanging out for it. Mars moving into Aquarius, the sign of the people, the sign of the community, the sign of the masses. And that is when we're going to have Pluto, collective assertion and collective power from the people. Whew, I can't wait. Bring it on. But that's the difference between Mars and Pluto. Personal assertion and power, collective assertion and power. What do you do if you've got Mars in a retrograde state in your natal chart? Well, as we know, retrograde Mars is at its closest and brightest point to the Earth, and therefore its power is actually at its strongest effect. But in the personal chart, it can mean you've got a bit of Mars overload to the point where you're like, I don't know how to handle this. This is too much. So we tend to internalize the anger that we feel with Mars. Instead of just expressing it like everybody else does and saying, yeah, you're really pissing me off or whatever, we keep it to ourselves. We internalize it because it's too much to handle. We don't know how to express it without being outrageous, you know. It's difficult to express Mars energy outwardly when Mars is retrograding in the natal chart. And of course, this is often the case for the collective and in our personal experience when Mars goes retrograde once every 2 years as well, even if it's not retrograde in our natal chart. Now, I have to say, when Mars is retrograde in the natal chart and retrograde by transit every couple of years, it can often lead to periods of depression because we aren't handling this emotion of anger in a way that's healthy for us. When we keep things to ourselves, when we bottle things up, when we just endure our frustrating situations time and time again, it leads us to feeling like I just feel debilitated, depleted. I feel angry internally, but it's leading to depression because I can't express it. And if I do, everyone bites my head off or something like that. So we often see people with a retrograde Mars may end up with passive-aggressive personalities due to the high level of inner frustration that they carry too. This energy of repressed anger is in their aura a lot of the time as well. They're just, frustrated with everything, and rightly so, because it's built up to a point where it's like a volcano about to burst. Now, also, it can be not very healthy for a retrograde Mars person to be in competitive spaces where they're competing with other people. It's just too painful for them. But people with retrograde Mars are utterly brilliant at coaching and sort of guiding other people in their competition, like tennis coaching and, basketball coaching and that sort of thing. They can do really well in leadership positions, particularly with sports or other Mars competitive fields, in real estate and that kind of thing, because they carry this energy of, let's call it wisdom, I suppose, about competition, even though they struggle to participate in competition themselves. It's just too painful. Now, the effects of a retrograde Mars can be lessened significantly if Mars has turned direct in your progressed chart. Now, in my not my Royal Stars Academy, my Guiding Star Patreon page, I probably will do a video in the coming week about how to see if your Mars and other planets have turned direct, because once they turn direct in the progressed chart, then the energies of the retrogradation they finish up, and we start to live the more normalized, if you like, expression of those energies. So if you want to know about retrograde Mars becoming direct in the progressed chart, then sign up to the Patreon family, and I will endeavour to do a video about that this week. So that is what it's like to have retrograde Mars in the natal chart. Now, everything I've just talked about, you can sort of put up, it's like putting a coat on to the rest of society. Okay, for the next 2 and a couple of bit months, like January the 12th till January the 12th, we're going to be wearing the coat of retrograde Mars. In other words, we're going to be embodying those retrograde energies throughout society. So we may all be feeling, potentially a bit wobbly with the mental health, a bit prone to depression, or a bit passive aggressive, or a bit having an energy of repressed frustration and anger. Competition might leave us cold. We might be just like, oh, I feel this just pains me too much to go and compete in that netball competition or in that art exhibition, competition. It could be just too much for us. So knowledge is power. That's where we might be heading over the next 2 and a bit months. Now, let's talk about this Mars retrograde now that we've got all the Mars information that's going to stand us in good stead. We understand how he works and who he is in the sky. So let's talk about this Mars retrograde. Mars entered his shadow period. That means Mars moved across 8 degrees of Gemini on the 4th of September this year, 2022. I want to ask you, think back to then. Did you notice people in your sphere becoming a little bit more aggressive or feisty, a bit more agitated, a bit more fearful? You might have noticed that in yourself as well. That might have happened for you around the 4th of September when Mars, let me explain how he works, moves back to 8 degrees. Well, he was moving direct across 8 degrees, and then he has gone up until the 31st of October, direct until 25 degrees, and that's where he's stationed. And now, until the 12th of January, he's going to be seemingly going backwards in the sky, back to 8 degrees, where he will station again, and then he will move direct and get on out of Gemini. Okay, so that's how the retrograde motion of Mars works, for those who don't understand. But the 4th of September is when we kind of entered into this zone, if you like. It's not the full energy of retrogression, but we're sort of gearing up for it. So you might have experienced people becoming a bit more aggressive and difficult, or you might have felt things a bit agitated around that time. So people who are going to be most impacted by this Mars retrograde will be the mutable signs: Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. So they are going to be most impacted, and especially anyone who has those signs rather strong in their chart, and or has planets or points like your ascendant or midheaven or something between 8 and 25 degrees. That's me, actually. My rising degree and my Jupiter sit between that zone, so it's going to impact me. I am gearing up for that. Deep breaths over the next couple of months. So be prepared. That energy of Mars retrograding will be squaring Virgo and Pisces and opposing Sagittarius and conjuncting any planets you have in Gemini. Now, the retrograde period is going to be at its most explosive. Remember, Mars rules explosions and fireworks. Around the time of the full moon in Gemini on December the 7th. Now, at that time, we're going to be having a full moon. So the moon, let's give an example here. The moon will be here on December the 7th in an exact conjunction with Mars, who is retrograding. So Mars is going to be part of this full moon. And of course, full moons are potent. According to my teacher, Ernst Wilhelm, they are the most manifesting of the moon's cycles. And so that one is going to be really rather feisty and explosive. Be prepared for that. But the good news, my friends, is that unlike Mars retrograde in 2020, which was the last time we had a Mars retrograde, Mars this time is not going to be squared by Saturn. Last time Mars retrograded in Aries and was being squared by Saturn's energy here in the latter degrees of Capricorn. This time, what have we got? We have a Saturn trine to this energy. So much better, so much better. Phew! This can be actually very helpful to this Mars retrograde period. We know back in Mars retrograding in Aries, the animosity and the angst that Mars retrograde brought to the world as we dealt with the whole pandemic and, reactivity and neighbors dobbing in neighbors and just energy of angst and frustration and aggression, and that mostly it was the Aries warmonger kind of energy that was coming out in people personally then. Thank God we haven't got that happening this time, agitated by, as it was last time, by a square to Saturn. This time, Saturn is supporting Mars. So Saturn trine Mars, what does that bring? It can give this energy of Mars retrograde a bit more perseverance to endure what we need to endure with this retrograde process. It gives us more strength, and it might even fuel a bit more ambition in us, which can be kind of helpful. It can make us more efficient and patient and self-disciplined. And these are all qualities that are a higher manifestation of Mars and Saturn combined that can be very, very beneficial for us individually and as a society. Now, usually when Mars is trining with Saturn, it brings increased sex drive, sex appeal, and stamina in the bedroom. But our energy levels can feel a bit fried with Mars in retrograde motion. So this might not be the case for everyone this time around with Mars retrograde. It can instigate committed long-term partnerships, and if it does, it will be because Mars is desire and passion and Saturn is endurance for the long term. So that's why I say the committed variety of partnerships. But if that happens, there may be big age differences between you and your partner. Mars is a youthful energy and Saturn is the old man. So there can be some large age differences if you enter into a committed partnership under this influence. Mars retrograde, unlike Venus retrograde, doesn't impact our ability to begin a relationship. Okay, so that's good news. I mean, starting a relationship under Venus retrograde, as I most painfully found out once upon a time, doesn't usually last much as you might want it to. So Mars retrograde is much better to start a relationship. But patience might be required before the passion can fully blossom. As we all know that instigating new things under Mars retrograde can be fraught with some frustration and delays, okay? So the potential is there, but you're going to need to just put one foot in front of the other and wait for the manifestation to really blossom, usually after the 12th of January when Mars goes direct. Now, also with this trine aspect, success in business and finance can come to you eventually. Though, again, with Mars retrograding, you'll need patience and endurance to see those through too. So just aware of that. Knowledge is power. Okay, what about Mars retrograde? What can we expect? What can we look for in society and the collective as well as individuals? Sorry, my neck is a bit funny there with this necklace. Okay, there is likely to be increased levels of depression. That is possible in society, okay? It may not affect you personally, or depends on where Mars is falling in your chart. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just know that in society, people are going to be feeling a lot lower and a bit more lackluster and like internally, mentally depressed and stuff. That is possible. So be kind wherever you can to the people that you meet, and be patient because you don't know what people are going through, okay? There can be an increase in accidents, so be cautious when you're using tools and implements and knives and machinery. Just be very careful because Mars retrograde season can bring about more accidents. We might be feeling more frustrated due to this internalized anger that we might have. We might have difficulties in competitive situations, as I mentioned before. There can be more court cases and legal problems that unfold during Mars retrograde as well. People are feeling feisty, don't know how to express it. They instigate a court case. Inevitably, they will lose if they instigate the court case during Mars retrograde, but just forewarned, there can be a rise in those sort of legal issues. There's a need to make greater effort for us to accomplish our tasks now. So because we need to make greater effort, and because we're not used to making the level of effort required to see something through and to manifest something now, we can often be met with failure during Mars retrograde, especially if we lack endurance. Often during Mars retrograde, you can feel like you've lost your mojo. Okay, Austin Powers would not be happy on Earth during Mars retrograde. Okay, baby. Now, because it's also in Gemini, I have to point out that we need to choose our words wisely, because this is a time, Mars retrograding in Gemini, where our frustrations lead to insults that are likely to sting and leave a scar. Okay, knowledge is power. Words are going to be our weapons during this time, for better or worse. So what houses does Mars rule in your personal chart? Well, these themes will be impacted by Mars retrograde, and as will the house that Mars is retrograding in, so wherever Gemini falls in your chart, and the house in which your natal Mars sits in. So lots of things are going to be impacted by this retrograde because Mars rules 2 signs. He's retrograding in another one, and your Mars is natally sitting in somewhere else. So all of these areas could be impacted by Mars retrograde. And this impact will be seen by the themes of those houses feeling like they're moving more slowly. Like your relationship with your children just doesn't feel like it's bubbling like it should. Or your career has got the go slows. You might feel like you're going backwards with certain things, like a relationship that looked like it was finding its feet suddenly goes backwards and you're like, why am I even here? Things can be unraveling now. The themes of the houses that we're talking about, they can start to unravel a bit, or even a worst case scenario, be cut from your life. Mars is to cut something out. So something might be being cut out of your life. Could be a career, could be a friend, could be a home, could be a certain financial situation, many things. Whatever Mars is ruling in your chart, that might be one of the expressions. And according to Vedic astrology, we should not buy a new vehicle or a new property when Mars is retrograde. We should not shift into a new residence when Mars is retrograde. We should avoid any operations or surgeries if possible. We should not start any court cases during this period because they might result in financial losses. And we should avoid competitive situations if if we instigate competition, we're likely to lose. That includes arguments, but any other competitive kind of situation. And according to Vedic astrology, we also should be very careful when using tools and be very cautious when around fire and dealing with fire. So, whether you align with the Vedic techniques or not, I just want to share that so that you have an awareness. I want to give you some remedies for Mars energy. If you want to amp up the good and decrease the shadow side, then here are some ideas. Now, if you have feeling like frustrated and high level anger and angst, then I would encourage you to do some exercise or physical exertion of some sort. Get out and sort of, dig in the garden and pull some weeds and that sort of thing. Or have sex. Get that frustration out of your system by getting physically active, not sitting around mooching on the couch. Okay, so get doing something to get the frustration out. You might feel like, I just don't have the energy for that, Kesenya. I don't feel like having sex. I don't feel like going for a run. I don't feel like pulling weeds out. Well, that's Mars retrograde. We feel more lackluster about those things, but they are the ways to get the irritation out of the system. Okay, so that's the first remedy. Now, if you are feeling internally weak and tired, then it's likely that your Mars is weak in your chart as well during this retrograde period. I would encourage you to wear red clothes, wear red gemstones, eat red foods, hot foods, spicy foods, to lift your energy and level of assertiveness and power, personal power. Okay, so look at how you're feeling, and then if you need to do that, take those courses of action as remedies for Mars. If you're feeling too agitated, then I would encourage you to use moon remedies to cool yourself down. Wear silver, wear white, wear pearl colors, eat leafy greens, drink more fluids, get hypnosis or psychotherapy. They are remedies that moon energy brings. So if you would like to do that, I would encourage you to see Natasha at the Wellness Hub in at the Guiding Star website. She is a wonderful quantum healer and regressionist, and you would really, really enjoy a session with her as a remedy for this particular period if you're feeling too agitated, okay? So head over and book a session with Natasha in readiness for Mars retrograde. Natasha, our quantum healer at Guiding Star Astrology. All right, that is our intro, and what an intro, hey? So much to talk about with Mars. Let's now look at what's going to happen for all signs. So let's start with Gemini, of course. They get to go first with Mars retrograde season upon them and in their first house. In a Gemini chart, Mars is the ruler of the 11th house and the 6th house too. So this is an interesting combo. We're looking at the retrograde from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. This is the house of survival and our main reason for incarnation. So this energy is going to affect you very, very personally. There might be more frustrations for you due to internalized anger now, and it's going to take a lot more energy for you, Gemini, to accomplish your tasks under this influence as well. You have to really try hard to embrace your inner warrior now. You're on a mission to encounter and resolve crisis in your life. That's the highest vibration of this energy, but it might feel really, really difficult to do so, okay? So time to rise up and draw on that superhero within and deal with any crises or problems in your life and be the problem solver. You might also encounter more conflict and aggression standing in your way from what you want to achieve. You just come up not so much against brick walls, but against maybe people excuse me I'm sorry, people, circumstances, or things that just are aggressive towards you, or they create more angst in you or frustration in you, feeling that you're not able to push through and resolve. Okay, so there's going to be more obstacles to navigate. Okay, think of the Army Commando unit. That's you with your life right now, navigating life, navigating the obstacles, navigating the people that are making it hard, okay? Your buttons might be pressed very easily during Mars retrograde as well. You might be very reactive to people around you. The physical effects, though, could be quite interesting. You might feel more sexually impulsive. You might also feel physically tired as well, but there's the sex drive that might be present there too, with Mars at its stronger energy retrograding in your first house. Now, the first house is also the impressions that we give, our aura, our energy. So there can be a stronger aura of sexuality or being provocative when we have Mars in the first house. Our sex drive or our sexuality comes to the fore more in our aura. And if it's not that, we might be expressing as having an aura of being more sporty, being, having that vibe, like Sporty Spice or something like that. Or Venus Williams or some other amazing sports person, with this energy of physical power. That might be part of our aura. Also, aggression and personal power might be in our aura a lot. Like, don't mess with us, like Mars is retrograding in my first house, so look out, kind of thing. Might be a part of the first impression that we give people as well. This is the house of the body. Definitely avoid any surgeries while Mars is retrograding in your first house. Any operations is particularly pertinent to you guys. Now, with Mars ruling the 11th and the 6th house, it's things like friendships and being able to receive the rewards and gains that you might desire in your life that will be moving more slowly for you, or you might feel like you're going backwards with those things. 6th house things that Mars rules are like you might be going backwards with a competition, like dealing with an enemy, somebody who is your foe, and you might feel like, I'm losing here. I've been sort of competing with this person at work or in whatever situation it happens to be in, and now they're getting the upper hand, and I'm feeling like that's unraveling now. It could be positive in some senses, though. For some people, it might look like an enemy being cut out of your life. that could be really good. But it also, because Mars is to cut, but it also, the 11th house is friendships. So it could also look like friendships or networks or social connections are somehow cut out of your life as well. So I would encourage you, if you're competing with a friend or groups of people, or if you're competing against some enemy in the workplace, that's not a healthy energy to be in during Mars retrograde. And I would encourage you instead to maybe compete against yourself in terms of health and wellness and diet and exercise. Yesterday I lifted such and such an amount of weights at the gym. Now I'm going to lift even more tomorrow. Compete against yourself in your daily routine and your habits and your exercise. Yesterday I ate 2,000 calories. Tomorrow I'm going to eat 1,600. And the competition, bring it into your daily health activities. Don't strain yourself or anything like that, but if you bring it into competing with self rather than competing with other people, the outcome can be a lot better while Mars is retrograding. And certainly competing with friends and social groups and that sort of thing really doesn't pay off during Mars retrograde. So I would perhaps just go slow with that and just back off a little from any of that kind of thing while Mars is retrograding in your first house as the ruler of those areas of the chart. All right, pardon me. Let's look at Cancer next. Cancer rising, Cancer sun, Cancer moon. Well, we are seeing that the energy of Mars retrograding in the 12th house, and in a Cancer chart, Mars rules the 10th house and it also rules the 5th house. So this is what we're going to be exploring, and this is energy that's playing out in your life from the 31st of October until the 12th of January. So there can be lots of activity going on behind the scenes with Mars retrograding in your 12th house. There might be a lot of gossip swirling around you, or secrets and persecution, or stuff you don't know about that's happening in your world. You might feel like you're being a martyr, my Cancer friends, in some way as well, and that your warrior energy is directed into sort of martyrdom. Now, if that's the case, that's not healthy. It's one thing to be a warrior and a hero in certain circumstances in life. It's another thing to martyr your happiness for the sake of another or a circumstance. So do some strategizing for when Mars goes direct and how you're going to get out of that martyrdom situation, because it will make you ill in the long run. Martyrdom is not healthy, despite what we're led to believe by heroic stories of Christians being thrown to the lions and stuff. It's not healthy. So what else can happen for Cancer rising people? Well, you might win a personal war, Mars is war, through some sort of research, exploring, some sort of topics and coming to a level of understanding about something. Could be a personal victory for you. You might also win a spiritual war with somebody, or a political war, or not with somebody, a spiritual war within yourself, fighting against the old self versus the new self that wants to come in. Hopefully the new self, the self that wants to emerge, is the winner, and the true self becomes victorious. You might win a political war. That could be with somebody else, or I don't know. You know about political wars. I don't. I have my opinions. I try not to enter into those conversations, but you might do so, Cancer, and you might win a political war. A marketing war even, this is the energy of going deep and intense with some conflict situation that pertains to 12th house things. You might dream. 12th house is to dream and to have sort of visions and so forth. You might dream about conflict or aggression or bullying or violence in your nighttime dreams. But what this is a representation of while Mars is retrograding is your subconscious battles coming out or expressing or giving a message to you. So if you are dreaming about battles and conflict and, argy-bargy, head-butting situations, then listen to that message. Okay, I'm in a difficult spot here. I'm, dealing with an aggressive situation that's not making me happy. I need to strategize change going forward in the future. And that's what this Mars retrograde period will be all about for you. Meditative walks are very useful. Mars is to be active, and Mars retrograde feels a bit lackluster, but a meditative walk is a good idea. Or physical spiritual practices like yoga can be very helpful while Mars is retrograding here too. There can be some subconscious fears and worries that now come to the surface, especially mentally while Mars is retrograding in Gemini. But Mars is also breakthroughs. So this aspect can give sudden breakthroughs in your spiritual or subconscious life, or more practical breakthroughs such as being able to travel to a faraway place when you haven't been able to before, or maybe with a matter that needs divine intervention like healing. You could have a healing breakthrough with Mars retrograding in the 12th house at this point in time. Keep in mind that it's still likely to come with a bit of angst and a bit of conflict before that breakthrough arrives, but it can come, okay? Particularly, I would say, around the 7th of December when we have the full moon there. Now, your ancestors on the other side, the angels, the higher beings, both positive and negative, will be fighting a spiritual battle on your behalf. So send good jujus, good vibes, good prayers to the angels and the guides that are fighting on your side, your grandfather or your grandmother who's really got your back and doesn't want you to make the same mistakes they made or something like that, who's really fighting for you to make certain choices and take certain actions in this particular incarnation for the sake of the family line and breaking karmic loops. In fact, Mars can be breakthroughs. So you might break some family ancestral lines of trauma and lines of karma and, continual habits of, martyrdom or whatever it happens to be, giving yourself away and that sort of thing. There can be some really great breakthroughs while Mars is retrograding. But once again, so you've got the angels and the higher beings fighting on your behalf. But once again, there can be this conflict and angst that comes first before the breakthrough happens. Mars retrograding in the 12th house can represent channelings, visions, intuitive feelings, forebodings, signs, omens that your subconscious makes you aware of. Unfortunately, it will also come through perhaps some kind of upheaval, crisis or conflict that you are made aware. Okay, so you're in a state of, I am just like, I don't know what to do. And then you see, I don't know, a magpie comes and sits on your shoulder and has a little chat with you and like, oh my God, it's an omen. What's this message from spirit? Google it, look it up. and then, you've gone through the turmoil and then there's an omen. So that kind of thing can occur for some of our Cancer friends. Your sex life. Look, when Mars is retrograding in this area of the chart, it can make sex life very vivid, although it can be really erratic, likely to be full of passion and deep emotion too. Now, this is a house of mental, our mental well-being. It's a psychological house, so it can represent, just be careful, Cancer people, increased levels of depression being possible while Mars is retrograding here too. So what houses does Mars rule? As we said, the 10th house and the 11th house. So it can be 10th house things that seem to be going slow in your life. Career is just not moving ahead. We're not getting the breakthroughs we want. Career feels like it's unraveling or being, even in some cases, cut out of our life. 5th house is love. 5th house is our lovers, the people we date and the people we feel a sense of heart palpitations for. That if you're in love with someone, it could feel like your dating life or your ability to ask them out is just not happening and a bit stuck there and it's not moving. Feel like you're going backwards with regards to love in your life and experiencing love in your life as well. It might feel like love is being unraveled out of your life now, or even being cut out of your life now with Mars ruling this area of the chart. I would also suggest it may be a time when you might lose contact with a child. Now, I'm not saying like, suddenly the child cuts you out of their life, but it could be like that your child moves away to university. You're in Romania and your child moves away to go to university in England, and you don't speak to them as much, you don't see them as much. So it could look like that too, a child being cut out of your life in some way. Yeah, or it could look like, your creative endeavors are just not flourishing and not as fruitful in your life as they usually are. 10th house again is career. So it could look like you're just having conflicts in your chosen career, or head-butting situations in your career. Like you feel like you've lost your mojo and that career's just not bubbling for you. Remember, this is Mars retrograde. Take some of the remedies I suggested in the intro to this video to help lift that energy if you need to, if that's the case. And remember that this energy will pass eventually. Use it to strategize. Use it to teach you, okay, what changes do I need to make in my life to feel more satisfied with my career, with my children, with my love life, and then make those strategic changes as Mars begins to turn direct in January. Leo rising, sun or moon people, the energy of Gemini going retrograde is happening for you in the 11th house of the horoscope. So Mars in a Leo chart rules the 9th house and the 4th house. So these areas of the chart are also going to be influenced. But the 11th house is how we can be profitable and gainful. And it's through exerting our willpower while Mars is in the 11th house, and being active and taking initiative when it comes to social networks and, communicating to large groups of people. Now, the one challenge is that it can feel like all our efforts amount to nothing in those realms. So Mars retrograding in the 11th house makes it very hard to do. But you might like to use this time to strategize about, okay, when Mars goes direct, how am I going to get out there and network and meet people and interact in society? Okay, maybe, next year, next January, I'm going to join this club. That's my plan. I'm going to go and join this group, this club, and, strategize about that now. Make plans for that now. There's an opportunity when Mars is in the 11th house. An opportunity might arise to lead a big group of people, but it's going to feel heavy and full of obligation and duty. You might be up for the challenge. I mean, you do have Saturn making a trine to your Mars after all. But just know if you do take on a leadership position with a group, it's going to feel a bit heavy for the first couple of months, and then things will lighten up when Mars goes direct. Watch out also for competition that can destroy friendships. You could have a lot of conflicts and words that could destroy your friendships now, and you might find that there are some friends being cut out of your life. So just be aware of that, Leo, and just guard your words, guard your tongue. Think before you send that email. Think before you, open your mouth about someone's, stand about something. Try and be a bit gracious to avoid this energy bringing you devastating results. There can be a lack of enthusiasm for organising or participating in social events and social occasions. That can happen for Leo people too, which is very unlike Leo because they enjoy celebrations and parties and things like that. But under this Mars retrograde, we might be like, you know what? Christmas, what a drag this year, Halloween, can't be bothered, that can be the case. So be kind to yourself if that's the case, and just, if you need to just go through the motions, just go through the motions, okay? It's going to feel like hard work or even a bit frustrating to get involved in business matters that have no centralized power, things like the internet, the stock market, Airbnb. For example, if you decide that you want to establish a website for yourself during Mars retrograde, then you're going to have a lot of trouble finding a website host or finding somebody who can design it for you, or the right platform to go with. It will feel like hard work and frustrating getting involved in the internet through a website or something. But once Mars goes direct in January, that is no longer going to be a problem. You can plod through Mars retrograde looking for someone, or the better way to deal with it would be to strategize. Okay, I'm going to get quotes from 10 different companies. See who has the best quote, see what their offering is like, what their previous websites they've done are like. I'm going to explore. And so use this energy to do your research, to strategize, and, one foot after the other towards your ultimate goal, whatever that might be, regarding some kind of non-centralized power structure. Some people might come up with like breakthroughs during this time, or some sort of innovation that helps others, that helps community, that helps society. That can definitely manifest under Mars retrograde. But usually it'll be through, okay, here's a really extensive problem, or here was a crisis situation that occurred during Mars retrograde, or here was a form of aggression that unfolded in society, and that's causing us now to find a breakthrough or an innovation so that that doesn't happen again. So it's instigated by Mars retrograde energy. Now, this is an Upachaya house, which means things get better. So the good news is, if you do have a conflict with a friend or an argument with a friend, then you do have what it takes, because Mars was retrograding in the 11th house, to patch it up, make amends, and improve upon things in time. Now, it could take some time, but you may be able to solve the problem between you throughout the course of time. Now, you have the 9th house and the 4th house also ruled by Mars. This means that if you're looking at buying some real estate or doing some property development or growing a garden or something, it's going to take some time for that to get its mojo on, okay? You might feel like you're going backwards. You put your house up for sale, you thought you'd sell it in 2 weeks, but it's taking months, and you're like, oh, come on, I've got to, I want to move to this other place or whatever. So these themes feel like they move more slowly. Also, traveling overseas, just be wary about traveling overseas or doing anything adventurous, which is 9th house. It might feel a bit like I just can't get it together, or it's not happening the way I want it to. It feels like, every time I try and organize that trip, it unravels. Something comes up and I can't go. It might feel like I'm trying to book in to do Kesenya's Royal Stars Academy and study, use the higher mind to study astrology or something. And I just keep, finding that there's other expenses that I need to meet, or I don't have the time that I wanted to put to it, or something like that. It can feel like you're moving backwards with themes of the 9th house and the 4th house. Just know that will end after January the 12th, and use this time to strategize, to do your research, to really be thorough before you take action. Thanks, Leo. All right, Virgo friends, Virgo rising, sun or moon people. The energy of our retrograding Mars for the next few months is falling in your 12th house. Now, obviously, as a mutable sign, Virgo, this is going to affect you very strongly, this Mars retrograde. This is from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. And Mars in a Virgo chart also rules the 8th house. Straighten that up. The 8th house and the 3rd house there. So all these areas of life are being affected. Now, in the 10th house, you might find that you are just lacking the mojo that you usually have for your career. You might find that your ambition and drive feel a bit frustrated, feel a bit lackluster. That's okay. It's just a couple of months, maybe a bit of go slow might be needed to review and revise and strategize about what you're going to do next year. There can be lots of competition that you experience in your career, and you might feel like people are up against you. Everybody else is winning, everybody else is getting ahead of you, and I'm just spinning my wheels. It might feel like that, but it's only a couple of months. You might be scratching your head as to why are things not working the way they usually do in your career and your endeavors out there in the world. It's Mars retrograde, okay? It's not you, it's not that you've done anything wrong, it's just Mars, okay? Some people under this energy might leave a career. Mars is to cut things out of our life, or they might have a breakthrough regarding their career situation. Now, usually it will come after a heavy-duty career situation, like, lots of competition or some anger in a workspace, or aggression in the workspace, and you're like, you know what? I don't need this, and you have a breakthrough about how to make it better or change it around a bit, or move on. You have an epiphany, basically. Mars retrograding here, usually in response to a difficult situation. Watch your words also, because words are our weapons under Mars retrograde in Gemini. Watch your words with bosses and authority figures. You don't want to put your foot in your mouth and absolutely stuff everything up, okay? People might be observing your sexuality too, because this is what we see out in the public. People might be observing your sexuality in some way. It might be more blatant than usual, Virgo, and you're not the exhibitionist kind, generally, Virgo energy, unless you've got other things in your chart that make you that way. But under this energy of Mars retrograde, you might not be intending it, but it can come out. Like maybe you're dancing at a club, or you dress really well for a speech you're going to give, but people perceive it as being more sexualized, even though it was never the intent, So it's a perception of the public, not necessarily the reality. Okay, so that has to do with reputation, 10th house, and a perception by people that relates to this potent Mars retrograde energy. Also, be careful of developing a reputation for antagonism during this Mars retrograde period as well. You might find that authority figures in your life are more pushy or provoking or competitive, Mars retrograde energy coming through them, or they're just constantly in a conflicting situation with you. We might also feel frustrated with our responsibilities and social obligations during Mars retrograde in the 10th house too. Now, with Mars ruling the 8th and the 3rd house, for our Virgo friends, it could feel like your communication is just ineffective. Like you're sharing your thoughts, you're sharing your words, 3rd house, but it's falling on deaf ears. Nobody's listening, nobody's understanding. You feel like you're going backwards with what you're trying to communicate. The email that you sent was taken the wrong way. The YouTube video that you put up was misinterpreted and misunderstood, that sort of thing. Okay, so be aware of 3rd house communications going a bit awry because of this. Also, you might be feeling a bit competitive with a sibling or your neighbours in some way. There might even be some conflicts with neighbours. And with the 8th house representation, well, the 8th house can indicate that there might be some financial issues that need to be addressed. The 2nd house is our money, and that's everybody else's money. And so it could be that somebody else's money, like maybe you're an investor for somebody else, or you're hosting a will, like the what do they call it when you are the manager of a will? I can't think of the word, so I'll just call it manager of a will. And there's aggression over the will that you are trying to implement or manage or whatever. And people are just fighting over it or something, or maybe you're an accountant and it feels like your career as an accountant is going backwards, or the themes of managing other people's money just aren't gelling for you or not moving as you would usually want them to move. There could be some competitive situations with somebody involved in spiritual work, so that could be somebody, an astrologer. Maybe you butt heads with another astrologer, or an energy healer, or an acupuncturist. It could be somebody who works in psychology, and you might be just sort of rubbing this person the wrong way, or they're rubbing you the wrong way. Competitive situations, and there might be a need to cut some sort of shamanic healer kind of person out of your life because maybe they're not the right person or the right fit for you. So, there can be that feeling of going backwards with those themes of the 8th house too. If you've been studying astrology, it might not be gelling like it usually does. We've got 3rd house learning energy and learning about mystical topics like astrology or esoteric themes or metaphysical themes, and it's just not, usually you're fine with it, but while Mars is retrograding, it feels like it's just lost on you. You don't understand it. It's not gelling. It's not coming together. So maybe take a break, put your feet up, leave those astrology courses for a little bit and come back to them in early January. You can join my Royal Stars Academy then too. So that's what we're getting the vibe for, Virgo people, this coming Mars retrograde season. Now for my Libra rising, Sun or Moon people, we have the energy of Mars retrograding in the 9th house. Mars in a Libra rising chart also rules the 2nd house and the 7th house. So for our Libra rising people, there's a few areas that are going to be under this influence. The 9th house influence is telling us to be careful when we're traveling to other cultures. So if you've got a tour coming up, just be careful of accidents or mishaps, or there could even be delays and upsets that occur if you are traveling. That's just blame it on Mars retrograde and just endure it as best you can if that's what unfolds. You might even have an insatiable hunger, a restless energy to just want to travel, to get out of the state you live in or the country that you live in and see something new. You know, feeling contained and you want to break free can be part of this energy. You might have some sudden competitive or argumentative experiences with a father figure or a person of inspiration. You could tone this down if you needed to by playing sports or a competitive game together. So you at loggerheads with your father and you say, well, look, how about we go have a hit of tennis? Let's go get it all out on the tennis court, Dad, and have a bit of fun. Get competitive or sporty with a father figure or an inspirational figure of some sort in your life. Playing sports, Mars, can actually bring sudden lucky breaks your way when you've got it in the house of blessing, the 9th house. But you must be careful of injuries through sports during this particular period, okay? So if you're playing sports, it can sort of give you a feeling of lightness or freedom in some way. But as I said, you may also need to be careful of accidents. You will probably find that during Mars retrograde here, people are going to try to force their beliefs on you. They might be pushy, they might be belligerent. My way or the highway, dogmatism, sort of pharisaical, you must follow what I say, or I'm going to murder you in the street like Hypatia, which was pretty much what happened to her, the poor woman. That can happen for our beautiful Libran friends, okay? Hopefully not murdered in the street, but people are being pushy about their beliefs. If you don't come on board with us, we've got it in for you. You yourself could be far more blunt and have a lot less time for bullshit in your life, and you might be the one being pushy and belligerent about your belief on somebody else. So be conscious of that during Mars retrograde. There could be frustrations that you encounter over some religious topics, or frustrations over some action that you take to uphold your beliefs, or that other people are taking to uphold their beliefs, and it really might just make you so irritated. Okay, one good thing that can come out of this, if you want to consider this good, I do, you might, Libra friends, have a sexual encounter with somebody from far away, someone from a foreign place. Mars is sexuality when retrograding. It is intensified sex, and the 9th house is people from faraway places and other cultures. So could be fun. There can also be some sudden eureka moments, some deep understandings, breakthroughs that come your way after a lot of problems and difficulties first. Okay, so it will come after sort of battling through some inner workings or trying to understand things from a different perspective, and then you'll be like, light bulb, and of course this is also this house does have connection to higher court cases, not sort of your low level dispute stuff. It's the Supreme Court, the High Court. So there might be some issues with the Supreme Court or the High Court or high-level court cases. There might be a lot more of them, or there could be some legal problems and sort of hold-ups that occur that might be happening in those high-level court institutions. All right. I haven't mentioned the houses that Mars rules. Sorry about that, Libra. I was about to travel on. Mars is ruling your 7th house. So for some Libran people, it's going to feel like relationships and connection with others is just moving slower than you would like it. You feel like you're going backwards. Hello, I'm a Libra moon. I feel like my whole ability to have relationships is non-existent. Or it can feel like, if you're not single, if you're married, it might feel like a relationship is being cut out of your life now, or that problems that you've got in relationships are just unresolvable, or that you thought you were getting somewhere with your relationship, but it's actually going backwards. So it can be business partnerships as well as marriages. It's not just sort of the married ring on the finger kind of relationships. It's any committed or legal partnership that you're in. You might feel competitive with a partner, and there could be some butting heads and some conflicts and some harsh words. Be very conscious of that, Libra, too. Now, Libra also rules the second house, so it's a time for just being aware of your money, because it can feel like money is just dribbling in instead of coming in a supportive way. Mars is ruling your money house and the resources that you have. So you might feel like you're going backwards with money or with resources in some way, or it's just not flooding to you the way it usually does. It could be that a bank account might be... you might be closing some bank accounts now, or shutting off some sort of investment that you were involved in. That can also manifest too. That can happen for various reasons, of course. But yeah, your resources, your money, usually will be where you'll feel the effect there of Mars moving backwards. All right, thank you, Libra. Scorpio rising, Sun or Moon people. Well, the energy of our Mars retrograde is occurring for you guys in the 8th house. Not only that, but Mars in the chart for you guys rules the 1st house and the 6th house in a Scorpio chart. So what does this mean in terms of what's going to happen from the 31st of October to the 12th of January? What might unfold? Well, in the 8th house, big transformations might be desired by you. You might want to turn your life around and sort of move forward in life, but it's going to feel like it's dragging. That big life reversals that you want to see happen, the changes that you want to come in, just feel like they're just... You know what it's like on Christmas Eve as a kid, and you're waiting for Santa, and you put the cookies and the milk out, and you're just like, lying in bed, can't get to sleep, so excited, and it's midnight, and you wake up at 1 and you wake up at 2, and it's like, when is this coming? That's what it feels like, my beautiful Scorpio friends. You know that there is a change on the horizon, but it is just taking an eternity to arrive, and you're like, what is going on? Okay, so that is the house of change with a Mars retrograding through it. There can be some crisis experiences that come your way, but when they do, they're going to trigger this fearless warrior nature within you. So don't be afraid of them. It might cause you a lot of stress, but you are so strong, Scorpio people. We know Scorpio, rising sun and moon people, they are like the strongest of souls. So don't be afraid. When the crises come, you have the fearlessness and the strength of character to navigate it. You might be feeling a bit lackluster when it comes to digging deep and discovering secrets, Scorpio. Now, usually you love secrets and mysteries. We know that. But there might be like, I've done so much research, I've been looking into, dispositors in astrology, and I've been, doing some deep research around dispositors or declination or something. And lo and behold, Mars, your ruling planet, rules you, retrogrades in the 8th house, and you're like, I just need a break. I can't research this anymore. I am done for the time being. And it is only for the time being. So take a break, because it's okay to have your energy dry up a little now and then when it comes to those things. Take a break and go and enjoy the park, go and enjoy the sunshine, and come back to your research after the 12th of January perhaps. Now, you could encounter some sort of crisis healer, counselor, midwife, shaman, regressionist, surgeon, somebody who triggers your aggressive or competitive nature. So that can happen as well. You might go and see a tarot reader or something, and they tell you some absolute BS, and you're like, that's it, just mind your words, because Gemini retrograde Mars can sort of foot in the mouth. Just suck it up, walk away, and vow never to go back to them again. Okay? Awakenings can happen when Mars is retrograding here, but usually they will come after some sort of difficulty that you must solve and move through. Mars wants to awaken you quickly, but the retrograde frustrates that. Okay, so there's awakenings coming, but there can be difficulties that have to be dealt with first. Be very careful also of accidents as well, and balance your life now by exploring astrology or the occult, or getting an acupuncture session, or even reading a thriller or a crime novel can be a distraction from things feeling frustrating. You could have fights with partners, Scorpio, about mutual resources, or even fights over inheritances or that sort of thing. If you work in finance, managing other people's money, then there could be a lot of conflicts and aggression that you experience during this Mars retrograde. It's a very sexual house, and you're a very sexual sign, Scorpio. But there could be some sexual aggression or frustration that kind of bursts out. There could be some accidents in the bedroom that happens with this energy too. So, I'm not saying don't experiment, don't have fun, but just be careful with what you do, and always regard the honor and dignity of your partner. And of course, that goes without saying, respect, mutual consent, and love is essential. We all know that, but I just want to remind you of that with this rather challenging energy in the house of sexuality, sexual expression. It's also a house of abuse, so please be careful during this time. You can resolve tension in your life by actually getting in there and helping other people who are going through a crisis themselves, and that's directing this energy to the highest good. It's problem solving. Now, it is also a psychological house, and we know that when Mars is retrograding, it can sometimes lead to increased levels of depression. So knowledge is power. If you notice that's happening, book in Australia. We are very blessed to be able to be a part of a mental health plan, which allows us 12 free visits, I think it's annually, to mental health practitioners. So if you need that, the first sign, go and get it, jump on board with that to help deal with any mental health issues. Avoid any operations and surgeries as well. This is the house of operations, and Mars rules your body, Scorpio, your physical body. It also rules your 6th house of problems. So it's definitely not the time for you to be getting surgeries. 8th house is surgery, okay? Avoid them. Now, Mars rules, as I just said, your 6th house and your 1st house. So it could be that these themes are just moving more slowly in your life now, and you feel like you're going backwards. Maybe you're dealing with an enemy or a problematic person in your life. Maybe you're dealing with a health issue or a problem, and you feel like you're just going backwards with that problem. Like you're not solving it. It's not being resolved. And it's frustrating because things don't seem to move ahead no matter how hard you work. Just know that's Mars retrograde. Strategize about what you're going to do to change things. Strategize about the problem. Strategize about the person or the enemy or the court case. And then when Mars goes direct in January, take the action. Deal with it. You will be so much more empowered by researching your options and knowing where you stand fully. Now, that's the 6th house. The 1st house is you and your body. And because Mars rules both houses that have to do with the well-being of the body, I would just encourage you to just do some sort of gentle exercise, nothing too extreme, throughout this period. Take care of the body. Gentle walks or meditative walks would be a good idea. Maybe a little bit of yoga, gentle yoga, not pushing yourself too hard. They're just some good ideas for taking care of your body during this time, because your body is likely to be under more stress. Seeing that the planet that rules wellness and rules the body is retrograding in a house of crisis. So be kind to your body, eat healthy, eat light, eat regularly, get enough exercise, drink enough water, drink plenty of water while Mars is retrograding, I might add, and really honor your body. If it needs sleep, sleep. If you need a pajama day at home, have a pajama day at home. Don't push yourself beyond what your body can handle, or your mental health either, for that matter. When Mars, your ruler, the ruler of the 1st house and the 6th house, is retrograding in the 8th house, you must honor your body. Care for it, nurture it, be kind to it. Don't push it to the extreme. Okay? All right. Sagittarius, rising, sun or moon. Well, you guys are mutable signs as well. just like Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. Well, why am I pointing that out? Because in the intro I mentioned that it is the mutable signs that are going to be under the strongest and most difficult effect of the Mars retrograde period from the 31st of October to the 12th of January, okay? So here in your 7th house, Sagittarius, you might seem to be attracting aggression from other people, left, right, and center. So arguments from other people. It could even be passion from other people, and in many and varied ways. Passion comes out in sort of extremes, doesn't it? Extremes of loving passion and extremes of violent passion, you know. So you might be attracting that sort of thing from other people. Use this energy. You yourself might feel like you're fighting with other people a lot, but why not use it to fight for others, not with others, Sagittarius? Use this energy to sort of, I don't know, maybe going to bat for somebody who's an underdog or somebody who's being maligned by gossip and lies. Go and stand up for those people. Be the warrior for others. That's the higher vibration of this energy, obviously. It's a time when you might be bargaining with other people, or you might travel for a business purpose at any stage during this time. But it can, and this is the one you'll hear most people talking about, it can represent difficult situations with a spouse or a business partner. Fighting, frustration, arguments, conflicts. You might need a little space. You might need a little breathing room from a partner. And this is an energy that shows a lot of erraticism in relationships. If it's been there under the surface, it really comes out now when Mars retrogrades here. There can be harmful, impulsive words. Gemini is how we speak, and words as weapons. So there might be some harmful, impulsive words that come out in your relationships. Passions rise, self-control is hard to find. You feel like you're going backwards in relationships. Some relationships might end as well. Ones that are sort of on the edge already and teetering. Mars is to cut. And when Mars is retrograding, he is, as we've said in the intro, he is stronger. And so his energy is overwhelming to sort of cut something out of our life. Other people in relationships might experience a breakthrough because Mars rules that too. You know, you thought it was going down the toilet and then, an epiphany, a breakthrough moment in your relationship. If you've got a really healthy relationship while Mars is retrograding through the 7th house, it could mean that you have a breakthrough that lifts your relationship to another level once Mars goes direct on the 12th of January. So there can be some good stuff that comes out of this, even though it might come with a bit of headbutting in the meantime. Do watch out for your partner. They could have an accident or a mishap during Mars retrograde. That can happen. So just make sure that, you know, if they're going to go drive anywhere, they've got enough oil and water and the brakes are fine and all that sort of thing. Just take care of your partners in that sense. There is a tendency also to pursue what we want in business or relationships very aggressively this week. We're like, that's it. I'm just going for it, you know? Yet it can be that what you desire feels blocked or restricted. You know, you might be like, that's it, I've been in love with that woman for so long and I'm not going to deny it anymore. I'm going for it. And yet, you know, I don't know, maybe you live in Mexico and they're in Texas or something, and you're going to get on a plane and go see them. And you go to book a ticket and the flights are all cancelled. And you're like, blockages, restrictions regarding my, you know, aggressive pursuit of this woman or this man or whatever. So be aware of that as well. There can be a lot of anger that you experience with the public or with your clients. Maybe somebody leaves a comment on your YouTube video and it really pushes your button and you get into, you know, you sometimes see these dialogues on YouTube videos where people are just pinging back and forth with abusive comments and stuff like that. Well, this is the energy for that sort of thing happening to you this week, Sagittarius. So, or not this week, for the next couple of months. So just be conscious around sort of the public or clients sort of pushing your buttons, perhaps. You might feel like you've lost your mojo with some sort of agreement or contract or alliance that you have. You might have lost your mojo regarding some sort of commitment or promise or vow or business deal as well. And hey, that's okay. You know, some things don't last. And after the 12th of January, things might shift. It's a time for strategizing. How can I deal better with this agreement or this contract? How can I make this alliance that I've got work more win-win, more favorably for us? And so strategize about changes you can make and then take action after the 12th of January. There can be some court cases and legal problems too. This is a house of lawyers and legal action and court cases. So you might be going to court for something, Sagittarius, that could be unfolding now. Now also in a Sagittarius chart, Mars is the ruler of your 5th house, love and relationships, and your 12th house, the divine, the higher realms, the spiritual. So it could be that the themes of these two houses are somehow, they're moving slower, they're moving backwards, or those themes are being cut out of your life. For example, this is a house of children. You might have been trying to make amends with a child or connect with a child well or build a relationship with a child, but then Mars goes retrograding and suddenly that relationship feels like it's just not getting anywhere. You're putting all this effort in and nothing is coming of it. Sorry, I'm just trying to deal with my Hypatia outfit. Nothing is coming of it. You feel like you're going backwards with a relationship with a child or a lover or a boyfriend, and of course, or a girlfriend. And of course, these two houses are tied together as houses of relationship. This is committed relationship. This is the love experience. So Mars retrograding can actually tie into what you're experiencing in the relationship house by saying the love that you felt for your relationship partner might be over. You might that's it. It's gone. I'm cutting it out of my life. I feel like I've gone backwards with the love that I thought I had for you. It's not there anymore. It feels like all we do is fight, and so now I'm cutting that love out of my life, that relationship out of my life. So these two are interconnected in that way for Sagittarian people. It can feel like when it comes to the 12th house that you might feel like you have more expenses and more losses now. This is a house of loss, like things keep disappearing out of your life in some way. Mars ruling the 12th house. You might be subject to a bit of gossip or hidden enemies acting behind your back, somebody sabotaging you. My beautiful Sagittarius friends, because that's what this house represents, hidden enemies. Maybe somebody has been, what do they call it? Flying monkeys? I think I've talked about that in videos before. The flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz. Somebody running around behind your back, persecuting you and creating gossip about you. Okay, so be very conscious because that can be part of your experience too. You might be having dreams about conflict. They can be messages from your subconscious. And you could be having dreams about love or relationship that are messages from the divine now too. But they will usually have a violent edge or an aggressive edge to them. It's a good idea to address any subconscious fears and worries, maybe doing a little bit of psychological work or looking at your traumas and dealing with your traumas. We all have to do that. That's part of our journey as human beings. We get traumatized by many things in life. Even those of us who've had lovely childhoods and lovely lives get traumatized by many things. So there is a real calling, I think, Sagittarius, to explore some traumas. But know that the ancestors on the other side and the angels and the higher beings will be, whether they be positive or negative, there's a battle going on for your happiness right now. And look, this could have something to do with happiness in love too. So maybe your ancestors are fighting for you to choose love, to choose what is right for you, and in terms of relationship. And maybe there are sort of other enemy energies in the other realms that are fighting to the contrary. So there is a battle. Mars retrograding, ruler of the 12th house in the 7th house, a battle being fought in spiritual realms. I'm just thinking of somebody I know who's got this position. a couple of people actually that I know. So I have lots of Sagittarius rising friends. There's a battle potentially being fought in the spiritual realms over your relational situation and for your highest good. So pertaining to relationships and connections and partnerships. So that's just, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray for my Sagittarian friends right now, just having realized that done as I do this reading. So that's the main gist of what I'm getting for our Sagittarius rising sun or moon people. Capricorn rising sun or moon people, the energy of our Mars retrograde period from the 31st of January to, the 31st of October to the 12th of January is occurring in the 6th house. That's where Mars is retrograding, but Mars also rules the 11th house here and the 4th house here for a Capricorn person. We're going to explore all these things. So in the 6th house, it's not as bad as you might think, Capricorn, because two negatives make a positive. This is a malefic house and Mars is a malefic planet. So it can cancel out the problems that might otherwise have arisen with having Mars retrograde in a house. So it might feel like you're going backwards with any negative energies that arise this week, conflicts, accidents, frustrations. But just remember, you've got this. You can check out the introduction where I spoke about remedies to help you. But ultimately, when Mars goes direct on the 12th of January, you might be the victor in a conflict or come out in a winning situation with some sort of frustration that you've had or some accident that you've been involved in. If you're an employer, I just want to warn you that you might find that your employees, which are seen from the 6th house, might be a bit more erratic and aggressive. They might be sort of behaving a bit oddly under this energy. They might be causing more stress in your life as well. The good news is, as I said, a malefic planet in a malefic house can give you more logic and more fearlessness in dealing with adversity. It doesn't mean the adversity is less. It gives you the power to be victorious in adversity and conflict. So you can really draw on some skills here, Capricorn, to overcome problematic experiences. Putting your energy into your health and well-being is a great idea. Just don't overdo it and cause an accident. Go gentle. Things like yoga. Don't overstretch, don't overreach, just gentle yoga, meditative walks, that sort of thing are great ideas to deal with restlessness and dealing with physical health and well-being. Also, I mentioned in the remedies section what kind of foods to eat depending on what you're feeling. If you're feeling aggressive, eat certain foods. If you're feeling lackluster, eat certain foods to fire you up. Do pay attention to the remedies because they are usually 6th house oriented remedies. So you can utilize those things to help you go forward. Karmic, this is the house, and a lot of people have challenged me on this recently, and obviously they just don't know their extensive astrology. But the 6th house is a house of our karmic dues, if you like, how we pay our karma and how we can burn our karma. And the reason that is, it's so simple. That's how we burn our karma, because that is our past lives. The house that's opposite is past life experiences, and here is how we deal with our past life experiences, the house opposite. It's called, principle of polarity. So karmic responsibility is here to serve with Mars retrograde, because this is the karma that we need to burn. So we can put our physical energy and our physical enthusiasm into helping and healing and problem solving in situations. That is actually a really good use of Mars retrograding in this area of the chart. Now, it might feel heavy and burdensome to do so, but you don't have to, if you decide that you're going to make up a bunch of salad rolls and take a basket of them down the street and give them out to homeless people, well, you only need to do that once. There's an opportunity to serve, to burn karma with Mars, putting energy into something. Now, usually we feel lackluster during Mars retrograding, but that sort of thing, it's not hard to come up with some sort of act of kindness or helping solve an immediate issue. It could be in your family, could be for a friend, it could be for anybody. But there are ways to do that, and it's a good energy to utilize while Mars is moving retrograde or otherwise through the 6th house. You will tend to want to be more mobilized, or you will be more mobilized by injustice and humanitarian difficulties. And that's when we reach into that Mars warrior hero energy. Let me be of service to you by doing something heroic for you, you know, whether that's just taking lunch to people who don't have any, or whatever. Also, this is a house of our diet. Watch out for hot, spicy foods playing havoc with your digestion or indigestion. Here, while Mars is retrograding, you might get a bit of, you know, stomach burn or whatever, or esophagus burn, whatever you call it. That can happen too. And this is a house of court cases. Be very aware, Capricorn people, of court cases and legal problems when this is playing out. Now also we know, as I've mentioned, that Mars is the ruler of the 4th and the 11th house. So this is where the themes of the 4th and the 11th house might be moving more slow during Mars retrograde period. That might mean if you put your house on the market, it's not selling as quickly as you thought it would, and you have to be more patient, you have to be more enduring. You might feel like you're going backwards with a home renovation that's just not coming together, and it's just time. And again, I think of my dear friend Becky, who's just tried to renovate her kitchen and was started in January, and they're still trying to finish it because they're so incompetent. But anyhow, that's the kind of thing you might experience while Mars is retrograding. Your kitchen reno is just taking longer than you thought, and you feel like you're going backwards. It could feel like a maternal family member, Capricorn, might be being cut out of your life in some way under this influence as well. Maybe, mum moves into an old age home, or you move across the other side of the country from your parents or something. And there's this, not that the relationship is less in terms of quality, but there is just this being more cut off from one another. That can also happen too. Also the 11th house is friendships. There could be a friend that has sort of pushed things a little bit too far, and you might be sort of saying sayonara to a friendship or a group or an organization or a club that you just don't want as part of your life anymore. You might be feeling like you're going backwards, trying to rectify something with a friendship, or being part of a club and it's just going nowhere. You're spinning your wheels. Why am I even wasting my time with this organization? It could be those sorts of energies that you encounter now with Mars moving backwards in the 6th house but ruling the 11th house. So just some things to be aware of over the next couple of months, Capricorn friends. Alrighty, thank you. Now, Aquarius rising sun or moon people. Well, we are seeing that Mars retrograding is occurring for you in the 5th house. This is happening between the 31st of October through to the 12th of January. Now, there can be lots of romance and sparks available when Mars is in the 5th house, but equally there can be a lot of arguments and frustrations with lovers. People that we are romancing or dating and that kind of thing and having fun with can turn into big explosive episodes that we didn't see coming. I would recommend Aquarius people avoiding competitive performance situations. Like you're going, it's hard to avoid it, isn't it? If you're booked in to go for a part in a movie or something and you've got to give your performance, or for the casting director or whatever, then it's hard to sort of change that time. You just got to go with it. But be aware, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Be aware that competitive performance environments, if you're vying for a role with other people, can feel very frustrating and feel very disappointing. I'm not saying someone's got to win the role, so, somebody will get it, and it might be you. But there is an energy of frustration around those things. Like maybe you're going for a position on The Voice and you're competing with other people, and yet the whole process, you're sitting there all day and then you're asked to come back the next day and compete again, and it's just so frustrating that you're tearing your hair out because you're not at your job, because you're here at Voice auditions or America's Got Talent auditions or whatever, and it's just so difficult. So I'm not saying don't. I did say that before. I did say avoid competitive performance situations. Look, they're not going to harm you if you go for it, but be prepared for frustration in the process. That's probably what I'm trying to say. You might be feeling a bit lackluster in terms of energy for children and how you're spending your time with your children, Aquarian friends. You know, your little 5-year-old keeps coming up and I want to play, you know, Connect 4 or whatever. And you're like, oh, I'm just trying to get this work done and I haven't got time. Or I was just trying to catch some rest because I was up all night with your baby sister. And there's just a lack of enthusiasm for the fun that we might usually look to enjoy with our children. Less enthusiasm for games or parties or dressing up for a good time, which is really sad seeing as we're coming into celebration season, Aquarius, you know, Halloween and Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year. Like, all of these things are going to be subject to retrograde Mars in your house of celebrations. So, yeah. Maybe make your plans and strategize now for how you're going to enjoy those times and plod through it if you're feeling a lack of energy about being involved in those celebratory times. If you have children and they're involved in sports games, make sure that they have the required protective equipment on and are as safe as possible. Now, creative endeavors are seen through the 5th house. Your creative inspiration might be very erratic during Mars retrograde. One day you might be really pumped about whatever it is you're doing, and the next day you might be like, I just don't want to even look at that art canvas, or I don't want to even jump on that computer to do that film editing or whatever it happens to be that's your creative endeavor. So be aware, things are erratic. Knowledge is power. Also, I would suggest this is a house that rules the heart. For some people, there could be heart issues. Be very aware of that. And perhaps don't overstrain yourself. You know, if you go to the gym, don't try and lift more than you're used to. Just take it steady for the next couple of months in terms of strain. Now, as I said, for our Aquarius friends, I don't know if I said it or not, but anyhow, Mars rules the 3rd house and it also rules the 10th house. So it could be these realms that these realms of life are moving slower for you than usual. You feel like you're going backwards with career or your reputation. It feels like everybody is just sort of talking about you, gossiping and ruining your reputation or something, and you feel frustrated and it feels like things are not moving forward the way you would like them to. It could be also, Aquarius, that some of you might be cutting out some sort of project for a career or a career in itself, because Mars is to cut and 10th house is career. For some of you, there might be a breakthrough in career, but it's likely to come after a period of frustration and angst. Now, also, Mars rules the 3rd house, so this is really tied into communication and words, especially as Mars is in Gemini as well. So I feel that, you know, you might get some news that's not so uplifting, or that leaves you feeling angered or frustrated. Maybe somebody sends you a nasty email or something like that, or, you know, somebody leaves a horrible comment on your YouTube channel and it just leaves you feeling irritated for days. That sort of thing is on the cards while Mars is retrograding and the ruler of your 3rd house. Okay, so you might feel like you're moving backwards with some sort of communication. People aren't hearing you, people aren't listening to you, your voice is not being heard. That would be the strongest expression, I think, of this Mars retrograding and ruling the 3rd house, my friends. Alrighty. Our final mutable sign that's being affected strongly by this Mars retrograde period is Pisces. Pisces rising, sun or moon people. Well, Mars is retrograding in your 4th house, Pisces. This is one of the psychological houses, so do be aware, Pisces friends, that there is the potential for increased depression. We're not quite in Mars retrograde as I'm recording this, but it's something that I've been very conscious of over the last couple of weeks. I can almost feel it coming, you know, you just get a sense. So I'm putting some strategies in place to make sure that I can uplift and uphold my mental health for the duration of Mars retrograde, which is occurring from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. Let's talk about this 4th house energy a bit more. We might be feeling restrained in some way, Pisces, in our emotional expression. Like we want to say things, we want to be passionate in our emotions now, but something is holding us back, or we're feeling like we can't. If we step out of our usual behavior with our passions, we're going to cop the negative side of that. We're going to cop some sort of, harsh result. There, we can feel angry because we're holding our emotions in, Pisces. Angry, defensive, at an emotional core, deep level. So Pisces, this could be quite a challenging transit because of that. It's a Kuja dosha when we have this, Mars in the 4th house, especially in not so good dignity in Gemini. We could be arguing with our spouse. We could be arguing with our business partners. We might have erratic partners who are aggressive, bossy, frustrating, and it just rubs us the wrong way. So that can also be the case for Pisces people. Even though this is a family house, we might be fighting with family as well. Be careful of accidents in the home, especially accidents that have to do with fire, knives, electrical appliances, and malfunctions of electrical equipment too. One thing I've started doing in preparation for Mars retrograding in the 4th house is looking into putting a fireplace in my house, so that next winter I'm not going to freeze my little tush off. So what I'm preparing to do over Mars retrograding in the 4th house to sort of channel this energy into the most helpful source, helpful expression, is I'm going to spend the next 3 months gathering quotes, strategizing and researching about who I'm going to hire, what product I'm going to buy, what's the most cost-effective wood fire I can have put into my home. So that is how I'm choosing to deal with this energy. And Mars rules fire, and retrograding means to strategize, not necessarily to take action. So that is an example of how we can work with this energy to the best of our advantage. At the same time, like I said, be careful of malfunctions of electrical equipment and fires and things like that in the home. You might find that there is an opportunity to sell or renovate. In fact, like I've described, preparing to renovate, strategizing your renovation directs energy away from negative things like crime in the home or accidents in the home and so on. So that is my example there. So, even if you don't pursue it once Mars goes direct, if you do, let's say you go and get some quotes for adding on a room to your house or putting in a new kitchen or something, go and get some quotes, because that is going to help this energy to be pushed into the most helpful direction and avoiding all this, maybe you might avoid depression by doing that. Whether you end up getting that new kitchen or not doesn't matter, but it can keep the depression at bay, because there's only so much energy Mars retrograde gives. If you push it into one direction, then there's less likelihood of depression, or there's less likelihood of emotional upset or a difficulty. Okay, so that's some strategies, Pisces, because this is a difficult placement to have Mars retrograding. You might feel protective of your family, fighting with your family, but also potentially fighting for your family. That can occur. Yet also at the same time, you might be wanting to break away from your family and the influence of your family and be free from that. Mars is a warrior for freedom sometimes. So that can be on the cards in some way. You might be wanting more space in your home during Mars retrograde. Again, do some research, do some strategizing, get some quotes and so on for what if. Some people, this is really interesting in this part of the chart, some people might decide on the spur of the moment with Mars retrograding to get a nipple ring or a piercing of some description. So if you are a Pisces rising person, you've always wanted that sort of thing, you never know, the energy might prompt you in that direction. Now, another thing we need to remember with Mars retrograding in the 4th house, don't buy a new vehicle, don't buy a property when Mars is retrograde. Don't shift into a new residence when Mars is retrograde. Do the strategizing, do the planning, but don't take the action. Mars in a Pisces chart is actually one of our most favorable planets because it rules the 2nd house, a wealth house, and the 9th house, also a wealth house. But these are well, particularly the 9th house is a house of blessing, but it might feel like our ability to generate finance and prosperity is going a bit backwards. We might not be moving ahead with things like we had hoped we would while Mars is retrograde. It could even feel like, we're having maybe I don't know, some sort of investment that we have to cut out of our life. We put our money into something and it's not really going anywhere, so we've got to cut that investment out now. That can also happen. Second house things that might be sort of losing their mojo or not really performing for us is we might have to focus on our self-worth and our sense of self-value, because we might have been trying to build ourselves up, Pisces, and to self-honor, but with Mars retrograding, ruling our second house of our self-worth and our self-value, we could really struggle with that, and it might feel like a really big effort to put protective energies in place every day and to think positive thoughts and think high vibrational thoughts about who we are and about our place in the world. So be aware of that. You might like to sort of have some strategies up your sleeve for how to handle that sort of thing too. Some affirmations or some rituals that you like to do daily to put some positivity into your mindset about how you feel about yourself, how worthy you feel, how loved you feel. Also, Pisces, we know that Scorpio, Mars rules Scorpio, which is your 9th house. So, there could be you might desire to go traveling or involve yourself in another culture or so on. And those themes might just be moving slowly. Like you go to book a ticket, but there's no tickets that you can afford for another 3 months. So you've got to just twiddle your thumbs to travel overseas or to go on that trip that you need to take. You might feel like you're going backwards in some sort of international situation or international connection that you might have. You might be studying something and it's just not gelling for you. It's not coming together in your head and your mind. So maybe it's time to just take a break from some sort of higher level study or academic work. The 9th house is also eureka moments and epiphanies. So you might be feeling like, I'm just praying and I feel like it's accomplishing nothing, like I'm not getting any messages from spirit. There's nothing coming through to encourage me on this path of what I'm praying for. And you could be really frustrated about that. You might even encounter some sort of religious animosity or aggression while Mars, ruler of the 9th house, is retrograding as well. So forewarned, forearmed, be prepared for whatever comes and use this time to strategize for the Mars moving direct on January the 12th. Aries rising, Aries rising, Aries sun, or Aries moon, people. Well, guys, my Aries friends, Mars is retrograding in your 3rd house from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. So this is going to potentially energize your speech, but not in the best way. It's about hurtful words that cause damage and harm, foot in your mouth disease. It's about being assertive verbally and straight to the point, but with biting words. So it's not much fun, Aries, for communication. There's a lot of aggression in communication, a lot of misunderstandings, and a lot of verbal conflicts. You're also likely to be, with Mars retrograding in the 3rd house, a very impatient listener. Haven't got time for what other people think, just listen to what I have to say, kind of stuff. Or if it's not you doing this, you might encounter people like this. You could be very busy during this time, busy with emails, letters, social media, trade agreements, and that kind of thing. You might be, flat out with that sort of stuff, but you feel like you're accomplishing nothing. There's, you push your way through all that stuff, and then there's another pile just as big the next day. So that can also be the case. For you, Aries people, there might be some sort of quick or unexpected trip that you're required to take at some point in life over the next 3 months or so. And if you do, be very careful of how you get there. Transport, so the vehicles are seen from the 4th house, transport is seen from the 3rd house, and Mars retrograding here can cause accidents with transport and traveling. So just be very, very careful about how you get from A to B. Your mind is seen from the 3rd house, and the mind might be highly stimulated. You might be actually unable to switch off. You might have racing thoughts, like your head just can't settle down. You can't find some balance in your mind while Mars is retrograding as well. So do have some strategies for mindfulness practices or meditations or something to help you if you need it. You might be feeling impatient and frustrated with the learning processes of others. Why aren't they getting it? I've explained it to them a million times, and they still don't understand, and so on and so on. So frustration occurring there. Siblings and neighbors are seen from and relatives are seen from the third house as well, and they can be sort of prone to accidents or behaving erratically or aggressively or bossy while Mars is retrograding as well. So if that happens, you'll know where it's coming from. There could be some harsh words from relatives as well. You might be frustrated also with your level of entrepreneurial success, Aries. You might have thought, I should be at a certain level by now, or I should have achieved this and I'm not, and it's just, why aren't I succeeding? And there's just this energy of frustration, Mars retrograding, regarding those topics. You might find that your whole daily environment, not only at work but at home or with friends, it just feels competitive. It feels frustrating. It feels charged with aggression during this time. So you're likely to be surrounded for the next 3 months by this energy, this feeling of frustration. Forewarned, forearmed. Maybe have a plan and strategize for some space, some time out, for taking a weekend away, for going, taking a bike ride down to the park and just finding some peace. Also, because this is a mental house, watch your mental health. Because increased levels of depression are possible when Mars retrogrades. So it could be a time when you're just struggling mentally. Maybe, if you regularly see a practitioner for such things, it would be a good time to book some appointments now. If you don't, maybe put some mindfulness techniques into practice, or, plan to daily have a meditative walk or something that helps balance your mental approach to life, whatever that might be for you. I think one of the books I read years ago, which I found really brilliant for mental health, was something called The Happiness Trap. And so that would be a recommendation that's just popped into my head just now, if you would like to have something to read along those topics while Mars is retrograding through this area of the chart. Now, Mars is the ruler of your first house of you and your body, and also the 8th house, Aries. So you really do need to honor your body and be careful with your body during this time. Give it what it needs. Give it enough sleep and rest. Give it enough good, healthy food, clean living, and enough gentle exercise. Nothing too harsh while Mars is retrograding. Enough gentle exercise to maintain bodily health, and that will also help with your mental health as well. While Mars is retrograding here, Aries, and ruling the first house, your feeling of being able to be in control of your own world might be really lacking while Mars is retrograding. It's about letting go and letting God and trusting the process, Aries. If you can do that, you'll cope so much better. There could also be, you might be feeling personal attacks verbally from maybe neighbors or siblings as well, about you personally. So, have some strategies for, okay, if that's what happens to me, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with accusations and aggression and bullying and what have you that might come from these people groups, Mars retrograding in that house. Now, also, it's not a good time to get surgeries, my beautiful Aries friends, because Mars rules the house of your body and it also rules the house of surgery. And when Mars is retrograding and ruling these two things to do with, bodies and cutting and surgery and what have you, it's just not the right time. You won't be happy with any results that occur if you have operations during this time and you are an Aries rising person. Also, I would suggest that you might come into conflict. I know someone who's Aries. Okay. You might come into conflict with somebody who is an 8th house type person, somebody who is a psychologist. You might be butting heads with a psychologist, or you might be in an aggressive situation with an astrologer. I'm looking at this chart and I know just what's going to happen. Oh, no. Okay, so there might be some heavy words with somebody who is involved in mysticism, shamanism, astrology, psychotherapy. You might be having some conflicting words with with somebody who is managing a will, or an accountant, or somebody who is a stockbroker, or managing other people's money. You might even, Aries, be having some conflicting arguments with a partner over their resources. This is your partner's resources, so there could be some arguments with a partner over resources, over how money's going to be split and where the money's going to go, and that sort of thing. You might feel like you're going backwards when it comes to those things in life, and you're just not getting ahead. So definite competition and aggression that's possible, either from Aries people regarding such things. I was going to say, or the other way around. It is possible that there might be aggression towards you, Aries, but I do have to point out that this is the house of your partner's resources, business partner, marriage partner, whatever. And so that is likely to be what a lot of fights are about. You, Mars rules you, are fighting over your partner's resources with words and emails and aggression. Okay, so I'm really feeling like, be careful, Aries, about what you say, about putting your foot in your mouth regarding these sorts of topics. Okay, thank you, Aries. Taurus rising, sun or moon people. The energy, and thank you for waiting till last, my beautiful Taurus friends. The energy of Mars retrograding for the next 3 months, from 31st of October to the 12th of January, is occurring in your second house. And in a Taurus rising chart, Mars rules the 12th house, and it also rules the 7th house. So these are areas of life that are affected for you too. When we have Mars in the second house retrograding, it means that there can be a lack of energy or enthusiasm for finances and material acquisition, or understanding what's happening with your budget. You're like, I don't care, I'm just spending the money. Give me a credit card and I'll just spend it on that. And you just lack the discretion perhaps, or the usual enthusiasm that a Taurus person would have for managing their material life. Okay, money can come in quickly when Mars is retrograding here, but it also can disappear quickly. It comes and goes very fast when Mars is retrograding. Even though the general energy of Mars retrograde is for things to go slow, the use of money can go very quickly. You might have some breakthroughs regarding resources, regarding your possessions, sort of understanding, where you need to go to get that new coat, or that, like a breakthrough about, that final plate for my collection that I need in my beautiful crockery collection. I know where I can go to get that, and I found it online, and there's a breakthrough. But usually there'll be a frustration involved as well. So you might have found that missing crockery plate to complete your collection, but it's in Russia, and currently the world is not taking postage from Russia or something like that, and you're like, frustration, blockage, restriction, okay. There also could be a need or a reason that you may cut out certain possessions and resources from your life as well, my Taurus people. So it's not usually like you guys. Taurus is an energy that likes to keep and store and hoard, but Mars retrograding in the 7th house of possessions can mean, there's no more room in the cupboard, and you have to actually put some things on eBay and sell them. Your spouse has told you time to clear out all that junk out of the spare room, because we need to turn it into a man cave or something. And you have to get rid of a lot of stuff. Cutting. Mars is to cut, getting rid of stuff. There might be some defensiveness or aggression that you have about resources and possessions. Now, let's say that your spouse has said, okay, get all that gear out of the bedroom because I'm turning it into my little man cave or whatever, or chick shed, or whatever we call it for a woman, and you get really defensive. You're like, no, that's all my my good crockery collection in there, and you're not touching that. And so there can be fights and arguments about resources, about possessions, about what stays and what goes. So nasty. You might also be fighting for your place, or fighting for your voice to be heard. This is the house of the voice. And you might feel like nobody is hearing me. I speak my truth and nobody is listening. Nobody understands. Nobody is on my side. No, they get it. And you're feeling like your voice is not being heard. Mars retrograding in the house of the voice. You could also feel like you've lost your mojo when it comes to a desire to be self-sufficient with resources now. Taurus is an energy that likes self-sufficiency. It really does. But here, you know, you might be feeling a bit lackluster, like, you know, I had it all lined up to go and book a tiny home to be built for me, a tiny house on wheels, or, you know, a shed house or something like that. And I just, you know what, I just lost my enthusiasm for it. I don't know if I want to do it anymore. I don't know if it's me. So you can be really feeling a bit like meh when it comes to creating a self-sufficient life, or, you know, just being, you know, resource independent in some way. So be aware of that too. It's an energy. Mars retrograding is an energy for speaking loudly and aggressively, Taurus. So your voice, A, might feel like it's not being heard or people aren't understanding you, but B, you could be coming across so loudly and aggressively, Mars energy, that they don't want to hear you. It doesn't matter what you say. You know, if it's done aggressively and loudly, people might be like, I just don't care. Nick off, you know. So watch how you speak and the words you use and with your voice when Mars is retrograding in Gemini, how we speak and the words we use in the house of the voice. Also be aware of accidents happening when you eat too fast, you know, things going down the wrong way or choking, that kind of stuff. Be conscious of that and just take your time and, you know, enjoy your food. Practice the slow movement if you're familiar with that. Such a fabulous movement that began in Italy, where we take the time and to really savor our food and enjoy what's on our plate and life itself. So yeah, try and go for that rather than gobbling your food down. You might feel, Taurus people, that in some way you have to compete for your money or compete for what you value in life right now. So, you know, you might value your house, or you might value your the car that you drive, and in some way you have to compete to keep it, or compete with someone to stay in the house that you've got or something. So that can also manifest as well. Now, as we know, in a Taurus chart, Mars rules the 12th house and also the 7th house. So these are areas that are going to feel like something is moving slowly, like you're going backwards, like it's being unraveled from your life. And that could be relationships. For Taurus people, not only is Mars ruling your 7th house, but there's eclipses that have been occurring on this relationship axis for you, Taurus people. It's all stacking up now. So you might feel frustrated and aggressive with your partner, a business partner, marriage partner, your audience, your clients. You might just be like, I feel so annoyed by this. There's so much internalized anger about this person or these people. They could even start to be unraveled out of your life. Like you might feel like, I just don't want them in my life anymore. I'm over it. This is too much drama. Get out kind of thing. Or they might be feeling that way towards you. It could also feel like, I've been trying to repair a relationship that felt hopeless and it's just going backwards and nothing's coming of it. And I just feel, it might feel competitive. It might feel unsatisfying. Might feel full of conflict and aggression as well. Also, Mars ruling the 12th house can mean that you might be having some dreams that are not so much prophetic, but you might be dreaming about violence and aggression right now. But it might be a message from spirit that you need to address some psychological wounds or traumas or something, and your psyche is trying to get your attention by giving you like challenging dreams at night. That can also be the case. We can also see that your ancestors, 12th house energy, your ancestors might, or spirit guides or higher beings might be battling over something in your life right now. It could be, Taurus people, that, and I mentioned this I think for Sagittarius people as well, but that your ancestors and spirit guides are in a spiritual, some sort of war, like the good and the evil, warring over you, and in regards to a relationship situation and a financial situation. So there might be that going on as well. There is also a need to watch out for omens and signs that are telling you about your deep psychological state, because the 12th house is a psychological house, And I would encourage you to just watch your mental health as well, Taurus, too, being that Mars is the ruler of a psychological house and is going retrograde right now too. So there might be there's just a need to pay attention to what is your deeper self trying to tell you, your psyche trying to reveal to you, what secrets are trying to come up and be made known to you. Now, do pay attention, do the deep psychological work, maybe do some journaling, maybe do some, you could do past life regression work. It would be very healthy to do that now so that you can work on those issues while Mars is retrograding. So, my friends, we have come to the end of the line. What a big video this is. Thank you for sticking with me. I do hope that Mars retrograde reveals amazing things to you and helps you strategize for your future from the 31st of October to the 12th of January. And I'll be back with another video for you next week.